Pay me, pay me, pay me my silver now. Pay me or go to jail. Pay me my silver now.
Roota.com. It is Saturday. What is it? 13th? 14th? What is today? I don't even know. 13th. Want to talk briefly about this guy, David Bateman, who invested a significant amount of money into silver. Those of you in the silver world, if you're on Twitter, you know who he is. He made his money in tech and then posted not too long ago, at least here's one of the posts, on March 31st. Here are the reasons I invested close to $1 billion in precious metals over the past 6 months, including a purchase of 1.5% of the global silver supply. Wow. 12.69 million ounces. And let me just read you. I'm just going to stick on this subject for now. And he's right about a lot of stuff. I think I'd question a couple things, but it'd be a good debate. Hey, David, if you want to come on the road to Roota, let me know. The global monetary system is about to collapse. Yes, the Great Reset is pretty much gone. The Basel Endgame is, on the road to Roota theory. No, there won't be the people who got us here won't be the ones deciding where we go. They'll try, and I've talked about this for almost 20 years. The reality is they'll be lucky to stay out of jail. They're going to be running for the hills every which way. So don't expect the Great Reset or the Basel Endgame or really much to anything to that effect at all. In the road to Roota theory, it's the complete destruction of that old system and the beginning of something new. Luckily, in the United States, we have a constitutional forms of money that we don't have to change any rules or laws. Gold and silver are money in the Constitution. So, yeah, I think that's what the U.S., at least just the U.S., has been planning to do for the last 100 years. So it shouldn't be as crazy as it could have been. But we'll find out. Obviously, there will be a lot of reallocation of wealth, which it needs to be. I mean, not to give David a bad time about being a billionaire. I'm sure he earned it. And, smart people make a lot of money, especially if they are in the early days of tech and understand tech, because tech is our future. But the reality is, in the world, there are, over 3,000 billionaires. And this is just one guy. One of the billionaires decided to invest some of his money into physical silver in his own possession, and he gets it. That's the biggest thing, is he gets it. So let's talk briefly about the reasons, then I'll get to what he just wrote, which I think is really important, especially on the road to Roota, especially at this time in the transition out of the old system. But these are the reasons he invested in the silver. The global monetary system is about to collapse. I agree. The biggest credit bubble in history will soon pop. And he puts it at $300 trillion. I would say it's much bigger than that. The derivative bubble should be close to $3 quadrillion. So he's off by, well, if you're into computers, you say, well, I'm off by 1 0, which is the difference between 300 trillion and a quadrillion. But yeah, $3 quadrillion if you count the derivatives. Which are absolutely credits. It's a credit to the other side of the derivative play. So if you have counterparty failure, that credit goes away, and your bet is, even if your bet was a hedge of a different derivative, and that's the problem that we're going to run into. And that was the problem in 2008, why they had to bail everybody out. Now the problem is bigger, and there's no Congress to bail anybody out, in my opinion. They'll never, ever, ever bail out the system again, because they don't want to. Who wins in the collapse of the global monetary system? The country that printed the most money, which is the United States of America. Double. I think we printed double what China, at least the stuff we say. we don't tell a lot of people about the stuff we do. Nor does any country, for that matter, at this point. Number 2, the biggest credit bubble in history will soon pop. We got that one. 3, there is no way the U.S. can refinance $28 trillion in maturing treasuries in the next 4 years without an obscene amount of printing. That is true, and that's what we've done in the past. Remember that $28 trillion. I think it's higher now, but he's only talking about the next 4 years. It used to be $2.8 trillion, and the same thing could be said then. And before that, it was $280 billion, and the same thing could be said. Will it keep going to 28 quadrillion? And the same thing being said. There's no limit to the amount of money that can be printed above board or below board. So yeah, but there's no way to pay it off. Well, there is a way. Go to the U.S. Mint and say, give me a $28 trillion silver coin, and the mint makes that coin and gives it to you, and you pay off your debt with it. That is legal under the Constitution, believe it or not. And of course, it would destroy any semblance of trust in the system, as if there's any left. But yeah, but that is just, it's a default. So Trump's kind of doing the same thing with the stable coin crypto crap he's pulling. But my take is yes, Trump is absolutely going to destroy the system. If it's not him, then who, right? Because we have to destroy the old system. We have to take out the deep state. I think that's part of why he's integrating cryptos into what we have today, into our global monetary system, so that when the global monetary system fails, all the cryptos fail as well. Because who's going to be selling cryptos as the old system fades away? All the crypto lovers are saying, oh my God, yeah, the cryptos will take over for the old system. Well, it could have happened if they weren't intertwined, but now they're intertwined. So the largest holders of Bitcoin are actually financial institutions. Michael Saylor's company, he will have to sell all his Bitcoin. JP Morgan Chase, all the ETFs, they are, by definition, have to sell assets as they become closer and closer to bankrupt. And the too big to fail bank, the reason they call it too big to fail is because if they do fail, it takes out the entire system. So will they be selling Bitcoin? No. Will they have access to Bitcoin? Probably not. Will the computers even be running at that point in time? You have a lot of companies that make this thing work, servers and routers and all that stuff. Electricity has to be flowing for cryptos to work. And I think that, they will work in the future, but it doesn't mean they're going to work during the transition to something new. So that's why I'm like silver over anything else right now. All right. Trump tariffs are hastening the collapse, and it's by design. Absolutely. Gold and silver are the only meaningful life raft. Physical possession is everything. I would say they aren't the only. Obviously, if you have land and your house, and there's physical assets, but as far as precious metals, there's other precious metals. I think only is a stretch. They're the best, and I don't think gold will be the best performer. It will be a store of value, but without knowing the full amount of gold there is in the world, which nobody knows, or silver, really. But there's a lot of gold that has been found and hidden that I've covered quite a bit. Read Yamashita's Gold, or The Golden Warriors by Sterling and Peggy Seagrave, and you're going to see, wait, that's over 300,000 tons of gold they're talking about, and the whole world, in the history of the world, is only supposed to be 220,000 tons, according to Jeff Christian, who got to make up the rules, according to him, in the 60s and the 70s. But yeah, really interesting times. So yes, definitely. And then there's after the crash, after the system reboots, I do think we're going to go to a crypto-based system, incorporating gold and silver, using Reggie Middleton's proprietary patent. But we'll see, right? Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. The whole world right now is a sophisticated game of musical chairs. The chairs are precious metals. We're getting down to not many chairs left. So I think gold's a chair, silver's a chair. Certain cryptos are chairs, but I'm not so sure they'd be really viable during that transition from the old system to the new system. I don't think anything will. I don't think we'll know the price of silver. Comex won't be open. LBMA won't be open. The Shanghai exchange won't be open. So it's kind of like, okay, what is the best thing to have is friends and family close by, food, guns, butter, you name it. At least for a while. But again, the United States has been planning for this for over 100 years. Hopefully, there are some cool heads that are prevailing, but we'll find out. Crypto is a psyop. Those who purchase will have no chair when the music stops. I don't think he gets this right at all. But I do know that cryptos are vastly owned by the deep state and the pedo gang cabal. So I think that's part of why Trump wants to take them out, take the cryptos down, at least for a while, to try to wrestle coins away from the deep state. They get their power from the ability to spend money. Trump going after George Soros is really interesting right now, because if you know who Scott Bassett is, the guy Trump chose as Treasury Secretary, he was the number one finance guy for George Soros. So it's kind of like, all right, what the hell is going on here, right? And now Trump's talking. If you want to take out, know all George Soros' secrets, Trump, talk to Scott Bassett. He was the one running the show over there. And that's why Trump put him there, truthfully. It's the same reason he put Jerome Powell was put as the head of the Fed. He's a derivative expert that handled the Bankers Trust derivative transfer to Deutsche Bank in the 90s. And they knew the derivative bubble is going to be the thing that destroys the system. So we're getting to that point where it's like, oh, shit, could be any day. Real estate, crypto, stocks, bonds will all lose significantly compared to precious metals. Potentially, yes. I'm not so sure about gold because nobody knows the amount of gold. I believe it's over 1 million tons that are available, maybe 2 to 3 million tons, maybe more. But it's not the 220,000 tons. And silver, it's the exact opposite. There's less silver than what Jeff Christian is telling you, much less. And I do think they're dipping into all the ETF silver now. By the way, David Bateman did post a picture of his silver, which you can see right here. It looks like a whole bunch of Comex bars. I would test those bars, my friend. Get the drill out and drill down, and you go back to the Comex. Say, hey, unless I found 10 or 100 or how many bars that have molybdenum in them instead of silver. I just don't trust those people, and I don't think you should either. So yeah, get a drill out, save the shavings, drill through, and then refill the little hole. You won't lose much silver hardly at all if you're careful with it. But yeah, we will come to a point in this transition where everybody is not sure of what they got. That's why I highly recommend pre-65 coinage. I highly recommend 1 ounce rounds. I'm not a big fan. I know there's a lot of fake 100-ounce bars, like a lot. And once a few get shown as, oh my God, it's molybdenum just with a little silver coating, the scratch and sniff test does not work, because you don't need all that much coating on a 100-ounce bar, silver on the top and molybdenum. Then again, I use molybdenum because it's the closest to the density of silver. So if you weigh it, it's going to be the closest thing to it. But at the same time, I don't even know how much molybdenum is. It's cheaper than silver, though, I believe. I'll look that up later. Anyway, yeah, just make sure your bars are real, because there's so many fake bars out there, and it will become a thing, a big thing. So nobody's going to trust any silver, and there's going to be a lot of remelting and certifying and all that. So I would definitely test those 1,000-ounce bars that you got and try to get some swaps going on, because they need the silver on the Comex, right? Try to get some swaps for like Silver Eagles. JP Morgan bought a massive amount of Silver Eagles, and I don't think they've mobilized those. They might have. They were the big buyer for about a decade. Not a decade, half a decade, when Blythe Masters was there. All right, your banking system has been meticulously designed to seize your assets, to buoy up a collapsing banking sector. See the great taking. You have zero counterparty risk with precious metals. That's true if you hold them in your own possession. The only risk you really have is if that precious metal is really precious metal. And as far as the banking system, yeah, it is. The Great Taking, great book, great, where is it? Here it is. Where is it? I thought I brought it up here. Here it is. Go to thegreattaking.com. It's a great book by David Rogers Webb. If you've been on the road to Roota, you already know this stuff for the most part. He gets deeper into the nitty gritty. It came out in 2023. As a matter of fact, you guys can read Silver, Gold, Bitcoin, and God, the book I wrote. And it's free. Go to roadtoRoota.com, go to shop, click on the general store, and those are all 4 of the books I wrote. And the first one's free. You just download the PDF, and then you can, for that, this topic, amazing. This is written in 2015, so 10 years ago I wrote this. Chapter 4 is called So Dark Is the Con. It's all about the DTCC and Seed and Company and the things that are discussed in The Great Taking. So for Road to Roota members, it wasn't anything new. There is a thought that, it's interesting because fraud can only go so far. When you're trying to pull a fraud over on the entire planet, you got a problem. You got no military to back you up. You got some contracts. You say, I'm a legal owner. Nobody's going to give a shit about your legal ownership. If you're trying to steal it from the whole world, nobody really cares. And that's another reason why the system has to fully collapse, is that the claim on assets that the deep state has done by putting everything into the DTCC, into the name Seed and Company and all that, that was their legal attempt to confiscate everything. And the good thing is that there's so many people who would lose. Ultimately, it's too many for the bad guys to get away with it. So, yeah, there would be no ability to enforce what they are trying to do. Now, they'll go right to the exchanges. The exchanges will be shut down. The stock certificate and bonds and all that will be, I don't know, is it a Nostradamus kind of thing? Imitations of gold and silver are thrown into the lake. That's definitely the Comex contracts and LBMA. But maybe it's the stock certificates too, because if you read chapter 10 in my book, it talks about fake stock certificates. Depending on what company you have, they have stopped settling trades the way they used to be settled, meaning that you go into your broker, you want to buy a share of Apple Computer, you give him the money, he gives you the share, signs over title, cashes the check and all that. Now, electronically, they don't do that. They actually settle in pools, and there's massive amounts of shares floating around that are owned by 3 or 4 different people, the same share. And it's all held at Seed and Company. So they go, you guys can't figure out, I must own it, type of thing. It's bullshit. And it doesn't work at some point. So there will be a problem, massive problem with all stocks and bonds, and another reason why you don't want to own a mining company. But besides, all you own is a claim on a share that a mining company issued, but other people own that same share that you own, and oh, by the way, it'll probably be nationalized anyway if the monetary system goes down. So I get all you silver bugs who say, oh my God, Bix, you're missing out on all that, the silver in the ground's unbelievable, you're wealthy, and get your mining shares. It's all well and good until the last day. And the last day is when the banks collapse. And then, no, those mining shares will be worthless. So will all shares. Maybe. Now, can the government pivot to something like a Reggie Middleton peer-to-peer transactions, where you got an owner of a share over here with proof? See, how do we get there even? After the system fails, we won't know who owns what, because there's multiple owners for everything. And these brokerage houses, SIPC insurance is nothing. It blinked the other, a few years ago, and it was gone. Same with FDIC insurance. So we're way past that kind of stuff. Anyway, going on. He says, I'm up 20% on most of my purchases. This was back in March, so he's probably up, now like 30 or 40%. Good for you. Good. Absolutely. Don't stop, David. Don't stop. And we need to talk to your billionaire friends. Explain to them what's about to happen. See if they're smart enough to make the moves fast. Because it really does take time to, I'm sure it took a while to get the 12.69, even from the Comex. I mean, 12 million ounce delivery is not that much. I mean, this month, the Comex is supposedly going to deliver 65, 70 million ounces. But if you get 10 or 20 billionaires of the 3,000 billionaires doing the same thing, and they are smart investors, there's a reason they have $1 billion. And it's not because they're stupid. Anybody investing in gold has a big problem in that you're investing in gold when it's 86-1 gold silver ratio. That should tell you something right away. But the reality of gold is that there's not 220 million tons that have been mined. It's more like 1 million to 2 million tons that I've found. And there's stuff I don't even know about. Silver, there's not much stuff that I don't know about. I don't think. I do know there's a lot of silver in the ground that has been locked up in the U.S. Coeur d'Alene area. There's a lot of silver they find, and they'll just lock up they won't issue permits and all that stuff. So there is silver. It'll take a while to get it, but they won't open that up until after the crash. Just like all the oil there is up in Gull Island, Alaska. They're not going to allow it to be pumped until after the crash. And as far as gold, everywhere. There's so much gold. And gold will be added to the money supply. It's not added to. It will be the money supply. And if you're looking for little hints, Bix, why do you think that? Well, here's a little hint for you. The Road to Roota documents, which were a comic book called Wishes and Rainbows by the Federal Reserve, a teacher's guide to the Wishes and Rainbows called The Road to Roota, a teacher's guide. And then Banking Basics is the other pamphlet that was released the exact same day. The first two had a big red exclamation. This is on the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston website, January 1st, 2007. The first two had big red exclamation points in front of them. I'm like, what the hell is this? Why I was there, I have no idea. But I was. And, that's spirit giving me a little hint. But the other book that they had was this little booklet called Banking Basics. And it talks about how it's about banks and why we need banks. It also talks about why banks fail. There's two reasons why banks fail that they give examples. One of them is that the housing market crashes and banks go belly up, kind of like 2008. And number two was the oil price crashes and that banks that are heavily invested in oil collapse, and then you got to reallocate wealth. But on page 17, we have this. Now, this is the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston issuing this, and you have a girl walking up to a counter transacting 19, I think it was 19, as I counted long ago, gold coins for cash. Now, just think about this. Is there any place on the planet that does this? Maybe at a coin shop, but this is clearly a bank teller with a little, little name tag, and interesting. You get when money becomes gold and silver, you're going to need to know the price of gold and silver as traded on the markets. There'll probably be new markets. So they do have a little graph of what the price of gold is at the time. And then she gives them the green dollars. They will probably be redeemable. And with the blockchain, they can be actually that physical coin, the exact coin that you have, can be put on the blockchain held by probably the government and then given to you in the form of a electronic wallet on your phone so you can spend it in little bits. And that's what David Ryder, the head of the U.S. Mint, twice was working on before Biden got in, and Ventures Gibson took his place, and they stopped making Silver Eagles for the most part, and that continues today. The U.S. Mint is no longer the best mint in the world. It lost that to the Canadian Mint or the Perth Mint. One of them. I think they're probably both bigger producers of the sovereign coins than the U.S. Mint. The U.S. Mint is going to have its worst year ever in manufacturing Silver Eagles ever in the history of Silver Eagle program, which goes back to 1987, right around there. And it's not because of lack of demand, because they are still on allocation, meaning they even if the dealers who can buy direct have a big order, they can't get it from the mint. And it's illegal. I've written my congressman, I've written FOIA requests, and it's part of the game. It's part of the con. So, but we will at some point. The U.S. Mint is going to absolutely let the doors open and rip out a hell of a lot of gold eagles, silver eagles, coinage, and things like that, because we will go back to that type of a system. Remember, when all else is gone, and I think it'll be allocated according to Social Security balances, is what, everybody gets something, and then you allocate more to people who've bought into the system more. Or something to that effect. And the reason I'm talking about this goes back to the David Bateman. He posted this today. How would the dominoes fall in a global financial system if there was failure to deliver silver at the Comex this fall? And could this be the last domino before the great taking? I've spent, now probably 20 years thinking about it, discovering it, researching it, but I'm not the first one, and I won't be the last. Who is the first one? Probably, where's our friends here? Federal Reserve. So this is the second document in the Roota documents. By the way, these all came out in 1981. When we were about to go on to the gold standard. The comic book was published. Wishes and Rainbows was published along with. There was a teacher's guide that wasn't put into. It was kind of put into a comic book type of thing, but it's more questions about how to reallocate money after the crash. Why it's important to have scarcity around money, and it's Roota who decides to use Social Security. There's about 60 questions. None of them have answers. I mean, there's just so many questions. Like, everything is a question. Why is Pebbleton's traditional distribution structures abandoned in the case of colored flowers? Will the American citizens try to develop new ways of obtaining gold? Will they form corporations to explore the caves thoroughly in the hope of finding new entrances to Colorland? That's the Grand Canyon, by the way. Will local carpenters or local miners race to build deep tunnels tall enough, they say ladders, it's the opposite, tunnels, long enough to reach the hole where the sunlit cave is, where the gold is? Will engineers compete in developing new drilling methods to bore more holes in the ceiling or in the ground to let more sunlight get more gold for a larger crop of flowers? How will the manufacturing and mining of the new money take place? Or will the incentive of being able to sell the gold generated by these new methods be essential ingredient? Finally, should the mayor of Pebbleton or the president or Trump, let's just say it's Trump, should Trump announce that the U.S. government itself will undertake some of these mining projects, raising taxes to finance them and distributing all the gold that is found from the venture equitably? The amazing thing is, I mean, look at all these questions. And it just goes round and round. The amazing thing is, yes, this is produced by the Federal Reserve. Right here. Call the Federal Reserve if you want to get copies of this. It's all downloaded now. They won't send you copies anymore. Back when I first found it, they were sending copies out. But yeah, This is Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. That's the website. These are not questions. The questions that David is asking here, these are not questions that are new. They've been around for over 100 years. And it will be silver because it is so scarce. The only secret silver kind of conspiracy of massive amounts of silver I found in my 20 years of research was the Manhattan Project silver, which I found pretty early on, mid-2000s. And if you don't know what it is, the U.S. government, quote, borrowed. Originally, it was about 700 million ounces from the U.S. Treasury to make the first calutrons, to make the first atomic bomb. And then they figured out, oh, shit, we need more. And I think it was about 3 billion ounces, which is almost total what they had, of silver was moved from the U.S. Treasury. And they were, at the time in the 1940s, they were silver certificates. So and there have been people who've come out and said, we shouldn't have done it, but it was very important to keep it secret, and it won the war for us, shall we say. So they say. You can argue that the war was already over before we dropped the bombs. And if the bombs are real, people are saying, well, shouldn't Nagasaki be radiated for 1,000 years or something? And it's like, no, it's a thriving city now. I don't know. Who knows what's real anymore, right? But yeah, that was 3 billion ounces, and it wasn't touched. The word from the government was, oh yeah, after the war we decommissioned the calutrons, which are the big magnets, and we put all the silver back in the treasury. That is not what happened, and I have proof that that's not what happened. But it did happen in the 1990s, and that's where the past 10, 15 years, 20 years now, that's where most of the extra physical silver came from. The remelting of the calutron 3 billion ounces, and I believe it's gone now. So I haven't found any big silver discoveries. I think when the system crashes and we open up the United States for mining silver on our own, because no one will trade with us, and that's part of the Road to Roota documents too. I do think there are quite a few silver mines that were shuttered way too soon and have massive amounts of silver in them. It's going to take some time to get it out, and it won't be gotten out at the ridiculous numbers today. One of the interesting things that's going to happen as the Comex shuts down is the end of solar power installations. I think it was part of the plan for China. They're going to do 67% more. So it's the Silver Institute is going to have to lie a ridiculous amount. It's going to be 450 to 500 million ounces of silver used just in solar this year. Even Africa is going crazy with solar, and India is going crazy with solar. The only people that don't report it is the Silver Institute, who's owned by part of the deep state cabal. So yeah, they wouldn't. And I've called them out on it and showed the world what they do and how they change historical numbers to make it look like they're doing the right thing, but they really aren't. And at the end of the day, it'll be the lack of physical silver, like David's saying, that will shine the light on that part of the conspiracy. And it is a conspiracy, because it's illegal to artificially publish technical information that is a lie, is going to mislead the entire world, because that's the amazing thing about silver is nobody freaking knows anything about it. I think Elon does. I think Elon is trying to get as much physical silver as he can. He's probably got some mines and all that, but nobody knows about it. Anyway, let's look at a couple of the responses, because there's a lot of people are getting smarter about silver. They know when the bankers are going to rig it. They know it's been rigged. They've been its price suppressed for 170 years. They know all this stuff. Credit seizes up. Banks fail. Institutions bail in. Stockbrokers sell off, if able. Any profits are theirs, and as you are only a beneficiary, as you don't hold the actual stock certificates, millions lose everything. Chaos ensues. Honest money, silver to the moon. A lot is of that statement that's the bad guy result. The good guy result is more like, yes, credit seizes up. Yes, banks fail. Yes, no, there's no institutional bail-in. That will not happen. People wouldn't stand for it. Sorry. Well, they'll do it anyway. Well, it doesn't matter. If they do it anyway, people, like I said, people won't stand for it. They won't allow people to come in and steal your house. This is so big. The things he's saying is so big, he's not like fully running the ramifications of a banking failure. If you lose your checking account, your savings account, your 401k, and all that, there'll be so much anger at these institutions. They're not going to be bailing in anybody. It wouldn't be allowed. The people would burn down every bank in the whole United States and then burn down the government and then go after the people who controlled that. So no, the bad guys aren't going to be in charge of this. It's too big. If they did it on a smaller scale, like in Cyprus and Greece and all that, they kind of got away with it. On a larger scale, not a chance in hell. Who owns the military? Ultimately, the people. Those military guys will take care of the American people before they take care of the politicians or the bankers. I guarantee you. Next, David says, I don't see how this could be avoided if silver fails to deliver. The biggest part about silver failing to deliver is that it shines a light on silver. And it's like, who was it that failed to deliver? It's going to be a big bank, probably HSBC or JP Morgan, I think, has physical silver, but they have other issues and problems. And I don't think that would be the thing that kills JP Morgan. I think the Epstein revelations would kill JP Morgan much faster. And those are probably coming out at the same time frame. So, yeah, when you think about silver, it's like, okay, how can silver take down the banking system? Not just because it's a monetary metal and it's, in juxtaposed to the fiat money. The way it could is that if the shorts, the silver shorts, are held to live up to their contracts and they just don't have the silver. And then they have to pay for, whatever it is. Remember, the Comex can change the rules and will change the rules anytime they want. It's their game. But that doesn't give these guys physical silver. And anybody going to the Comex to get physical silver, like China, like Russia, like India, like rich guys like David Bateman, they will no longer be able to source silver from the Comex, which sets the price. The LBMA won't have any silver either. Poof, all of a sudden the silver market is front page of the news. That's when we say, well, the Silver Institute lied. The Commitment of Traders report says, these banks are heavily concentrated short. There's only 8 banks who are really rigging the price. Why were they allowed to do this? The CFTC commissioners, there's only one left. Caroline Pham from Citibank, who's had a silver short on SLV since SLV had started. That was their job. So, yeah. People you got to run the consequences of everything out. Does that mean that shares in the mining companies go poof? David says, I'm curious if a failure to deliver will result in mines being nationalized and investors being paid out in cash. Could the government even run the mines? Doubt it. If the great taking happens, the banks would end up owning the miners, I guess. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it would be the banks. Go get it, buddy. Go get it. I'll be right back with you. Oh, sorry about that. Delivery. Anyway, yeah. I think the thing everybody needs to think about is you can't rely on kind of anybody anymore. When the system falls apart, there'll be nobody raising their hand and say, hey, trust me. I mean, people will raise their hand and say, trust me. No one's going to trust them. For the United States, at least according to the Road to Roota documents, what happens is we stop trading with everybody else and probably bring our troops home. We should have done a long time ago. And then figure out what we need to do internally. And that's kind of what Trump is doing by bringing all these manufacturing home. But as far as the money goes, we really, if you don't have any deciders, which I don't think there can be, because no faith and trust in anybody, then it goes back to our Constitution. I think everybody can agree on that. And that's when we get into gold and silver as money, and we'll go from there. Cryptos, they might come back after the shake up, shake down, whatever it is. I think some of them are necessary for our future. Theta, for example. And I think Reggie Middleton's Veritasium, the technology of his invention, could be greatly used if we want to restart the stock market. First of all, we'd have to figure out how many shares, who has legitimate shares and who has the fake shares, and is there any way to tell? And then which companies would be nationalized and which wouldn't? And at what price will people get paid out? There's all kinds of things and problems. That's why there's 60 to 80 questions in the Road to Roota Teacher's Guide with no answers. I feel sorry for the teachers, but it's important to have these conversations, especially these days, because we're hearing it all the time. What's going to happen? The quantum financial system, JESRA, NESRA, the dinar, the secret Yamashita's funds, and all this stuff. It all takes deciders. And there will be no deciders. That's why NESRA and JESRA won't work. That's why the quantum financial system was always bullshit. Because people played it off as, oh yeah, this is it. And it's just bullshit. Because there can't be any deciders. Because no one's going to trust anybody. So, that's my take at least. All right. Stroke of a button, the accounts would be cash settled. Yeah. Yeah, I think the Comex is kind of set up for that if anything goes wrong. That's why Rustin Benham, the head of the CFTC, said it was the structure of the silver market that tamped down the price of silver when it almost hit $30. Oh my God, it almost hit $30 in 2021. The insanity is it's a derivative market that is 99% of the trades are a handful of traders trading back and forth to set the prices of all the commodities and all the things that need pricing. So yeah, it's a con. Yeah, and David Bateman says, then what? That's true. Stroke of a button, the accounts would be cash settled. All right, let's just say that there is a problem with silver and it's cash settled and everybody kind of walks away. Then what? What exchange will be open? The LBMA will obviously be closed because it's a fraud anyway, and the physical silver would be gone from the LBMA. And then you got the Shanghai Exchange, which is small. They got 40 million ounces. That would be gone in a blink, so that wouldn't be trading. Yeah. Then what is the question? What kind of markets? How do we rebuild our exchanges and markets? Can we? Will it just be local prices? Will the U.S. come out and say, well, since nobody can agree on anything, we have to go back to constitutional money, which we have massive amounts of gold, and we've been preparing for this. But will the U.S. say silver is way too valuable to be used as money? It's valuable in the high tech stuff we have to build. Who knows? Scott says, do you see an actual failure to deliver on the horizon? When this happened with gold earlier in the year in London, they blamed logistics. It didn't really happen with gold. It was delays, and that's the logistics. The problem, silver, is not about delays. It's about there's not enough silver. There's massive amounts of gold. It just wasn't in the right place at the right time. David said, there's a lot more gold available to bail out the exchange than there is in silver. Yes, that is true. Jason M. Somebody will fill the void and make a lot of money in the process. Who? Don't know. But a lot of folks see that as a real possibility and are probably positioning themselves accordingly. Well, that would mean buying as much silver as possible and getting it out of the system. The LBMA, the LBMA warehouses and the Comex warehouses, I think all that silver will be nationalized if you keep it in there. I would not keep any silver in those exchanges. I know how do you sell it back if you can't get it back into the system? I've said it for a very long time. The worst thing you possibly do is understand what's going on with silver and then invest in the wrong thing in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like people will buy all this silver and put it in their safe deposit box. And I'm like, no, that's exactly what you don't want to do. You're buying the silver because these banks are going down. First thing they're going to do, and they have done it before, is run into the safe deposit boxes with their saws, and they'll saw it all open. They're trying to protect their family too. I'm talking about like the managers and the tellers of the bank, and then there'll be rushes on banks. You don't think they'll go after the safe deposit boxes? Of course they will. Get it out of the safe deposit. It's nothing safe about those safe deposit boxes. So this has the more money would be printed. Yes, according to the bylaws of the Comex, they can settle in cash. So, but the problem is it doesn't fix what's going to happen next. Like was asked above by David, is like, then what? So they settle in cash, and then what? They can't reopen the silver market because nobody has any silver, physical silver. So it'll be interesting. Tim Smith says, or Tim Smith, or Tim E. Smith? I don't know. Failure to deliver could be catastrophic. It may well ripple through the entire Western financial system. Of course it would. Now, here's the other thing. Let's say they honor contracts and silver in HSBC, or whoever's the biggest short. I think it's HSBC right now because they're delivering all the silver. HSBC loses, let's just say $50 billion and are bankrupt, are insolvent. Will they be bailed out? Would they continue to trade the silver? It's another way that silver can kill the banking cabal, is just take out one of the too big to fail banks. And then HSBC probably would be bailed out by London or the Fed or someone. But what would that show the market? And then, it would be over. The end game was always silver will take out the banking cabal. So yes, it will ripple through the Western financial system. The effect on trust would be devastating. There's not much trust left, but I agree. It would indicate that banks can't cover their bets. Yep. The great taking will possibly occur in Europe. Spain has already restricted the people from accessing their money in over 3,000 euros. Again, the great taking can only happen on a smaller scale. On a worldwide global scale that we're talking about, no one would give a shit who holds the paper. I don't care if you hold the paper. I'm keeping my house. What are you going to do about it? I'm keeping my mortgage. I'm not keeping my mortgage. I'm going to protect my house. No military is going to come or police is going to come and foreclose on your house because they're your neighbors. They're your friends, and it will be exposed what had happened. It's not like they can do it in secret. And the only way these guys survive is in the dark. So the great taking actually can't happen. They can't steal all the assets legally because the laws cannot be enforced at that point. So it does cause chaos. The world will be very different. You won't have a 401k or a stock or a bond, or most of these guys would go to jail. The entire DTCC board of directors would be in jail. The stock markets would be jailed. Jamie Dimon would be in jail. Probably all politicians would be in jail. It's a big deal what's happening. He goes on to say, I don't believe the great taking will happen in the U.S. because of our Constitution, Trump in the White House, and the 2A. If the left was in power in America, then it could very well be attempted. After all, they tried to force the nation to accept a bioweapon. And we see that what the government of the UK is doing to the rights of the citizens now before such an event. UK is about to be overthrown. The government's about to be tossed out on their ears, which is good. And that's every country. Everybody's going to do it. It's just a matter of when. This is the great danger of centralized digital currency. There's many dangers of digital currency, but there's also benefits of currency in the hands of the people. It all depends on how it's constructed, and if it's constructed properly. Like Bitcoin is constructed very well, but then people get involved and they do stupid things. Like, Bitcoin, you can't scale Bitcoin. So it's useless as a form of cash like Satoshi wanted. Will Bitcoin be a form of exchange after the crash and the great taking, whatever happens to that? It'll be hard to, Bitcoin will go, if Michael Saylor has to dump everything and all the ETFs have to dump everything, you've got a problem. But the exchanges won't even be open, and it's like, okay, then they have nothing. You run these scenarios in your head, and what does it come down to? Whatever's in your own possession. They suppressed the price of silver too much over the last 17 years. There's no supply. Yes, that's true, although I would say it's 170 years, not 17 years, in different forms. The last 17 years, this guy, Charles Lafeche, he's probably only been in the market for, 10 years or so. So it seems like only the last 17 years, which would put us back in, what is that, since 2008. Yeah, I was watching them rig the markets long before that. And then you dive into it. It really goes back to the 1850s, to the Opium Wars, where all the silver was being drained from London to buy the spices and teas and porcelain, I think, was a big draw. And in England, all the money people were sending silver to China. And so that's when HSBC was created, and the English went over there and got them addicted to opium, and the only way they could pay for the opium was with silver. Kind of cruel, but hey, it is what it is. And all's fair in love and war, and that's what started the Opium Wars. And HSBC was created, and HSBC has been the main rigger. There's been others. Bear Stearns had the mantle for a while. Drexel Burnham, obviously J.P. Morgan Chase, and then Bank of America after J.P. Morgan. I think it's still J.P. Morgan, but BlackRock is knee deep in it, and they're more hidden because they're not a bank. They're more of a hedge fund, and it's run by forget the guy's name. They're silver and gold, precious metals department, but it's one of the banking families from England. Yeah. All right. Let's see. This guy, JXU. Oh, this is the guy who posts the Hong Kong exchange information, which is really good on X. Go check it out. JXU. He says, and China knows this, by the way. The fact that China surprised the world with 67% growth in solar installations so far this year in the first half, that's just shocking. And no, not a word from the Silver Institute. Not a freaking word. It's ridiculous. The most I can share is we over here in China are buying physical silver. The amount I cannot disclose. Being driven around in new Rolls Royces is not cool. Shopping for physical silver is the new cool. Jenny had this in her data, by the way, that the younger generation is really going to pick up on owning silver more than cryptos. And you can see that with the next crypto collapse, and it's going to come, and then it'll be saved again. And cryptos are the future. They're part of the future, but it doesn't mean they can't collapse 95% again. And even Bitcoin. People will not want Bitcoin if in certain situations. So who knows? You got to have physical silver. That should be your number one holding, in my opinion. Monkey Ball says, love the name. We have the nickel squeeze of 2021. I don't remember wrong. As an example, they won't honor the contracts and settle in paper at a price that they want. And what are you going to do? Demand the LBMA? I think we need to consider the full extent of the meaning of a rigged system. The nickel problem was not necessarily a nickel shortage. A long-term nickel shortage. It was more a short-term problem, and then people got off sides, and there was a lot of fraud within the paper storage system. But yeah, they just settled in cash. But then the nickel market was allowed to open up again because then it wasn't a long-term problem. Silver is a long-term problem. 170 years of price suppression, and very few new silver mines opening up at all. I mean, we're pretty much stuck at 800 to 850 million ounces for, even if the price is $1,000 an ounce. It'll take a good 5 to 10 years to get any mines up. Yes, they'll be fast tracked, but it does take a long time. You got to do all the mine surveys and you got to get the permits. Those will be faster. Then you need the equipment and the capital and the people, and then you start the process. And then it's a difficult process. It's not easy, especially silver mines. A lot of the easy silver mine, the silver deposits that were on the surface of the planet have already been gotten. The easy stuff is easy to get. Harder stuff is digging down deeper and figuring new ways to make silver. All right. Tinfoil glasses. That's a funny name. Are you going to try to clean them out? Yeah, there you go. I like that. David, go clean out the Comex. If you got the money, get some friends. Don't be one person. Don't do it alone. And don't tell anybody you're doing it. But get some friends who have money. And, you can solve this problem on your own. You going to clean them out? I would expect a parabolic spike in spot prices, runs on bullion shops, and probably nationalization of mining. They're just waiting for an excuse to roll out tokenized money. They've got the legal framework now. They are not in charge. You can't have a banking collapse and the same people be in charge. So they're going to want to, but nobody's going to allow it. Would you? The biggest problem in the United States is debt. This solves the debt problem. Jubilee time. Anyway, Dave from the North. Depends on what they're taking. Paper promises keep them. Everything else, Molan Lave. I don't know what that means, but I'm probably an idiot. To each his own, maybe. Sounds like. It depends on what the powers at will decide. I don't think the powers that be will have any say at all. Truthfully, Jerome Powell, he's lost all faith and confidence. The U.S. government with their 14 computers printing money from thin air. Lost all confidence. The EU is a joke. So's the UK. Who will have? Nobody. Scott Bessent, the head of George Soros' finance team. You think we're going to listen to that jackass? No. They're going to take him out when they take Trump's going after his old boss, and he was the main finance guy. Scott Bessent was George Soros' main finance guy. Anyway. Just cancel all contracts and bullion banks. Walk away with a clean sheet. Again, then what? Then it gets to then what? If they walk away, what, do they start a new market the exact same way? No, they can't. So then what is what David was asking, and that's true. That's what the Road to Roota the original Road to Roota interviews I did. It'll be after the crash. My interview with SGT Report in 2010. That was like my second interview ever, and it was big. And it was like, what happens after the crash? We know the system's got to crash, and to wipe the slate clean of all the bullshit. But then what happens after? Do we turn to the same people who got us here, or do we say no? We have a constitution. We don't have to believe in anybody other than that document. Interesting times. It's almost like it's planned. Of course it's planned. Everything's been planned for humanity since day one. Kind of fun living through it, though. Trying to figure out the little ins and outs. PMs are just a decade behind in a bull. Precious metals, well, you're thinking of them, if you're thinking, bull market, bear market, all that, you're thinking of it all wrong because the price has been wrong. The price has been artificially suppressed for 170 years. So when it's freely traded, what's the price going to be? I don't know. I think it'll be, 1 ounce of silver buys you a nice Tesla car, an S model. So is that $100,000 an ounce? And most people don't have silver, by the way, in case you're thinking, everybody's got silver. No. There'll be people pulling their fillings out, trying to get the little bit of silver that used to be in there when they used to use silver in fillings. PMs are just a decade behind the bull. Do it. Let's find out. I love that stuff. USC states confiscate mines located in their jurisdiction. it would spill over to the vaults and storage facilities. See, here's the thing. The U.S. government, federal government, has already sequestered most of the mines in the United States and put them into national parks and military bases and things like that. I've gone over that quite a bit. So, no, it won't be the states. And the states are not going to be trusted either, at least not the leftist states. There's a massive amount of gold in California, Arizona, all that area around the Grand Canyon. There's just massive amounts of gold and silver. The question is, who's going to get it? I think it'll get the people will take it back to the people. So we'll find out. Let's see. You would see states confiscate mines located in their jurisdiction. It would spill over to vaults and storage facilities. Silver is a military strategic asset. They don't want you to think about it. It would be full of freak out scramble to grab whatever you could in desperation. They might even go after retail. I think stacking silver, you're thinking about it much lower dynamic than what I think is coming, which is the shutdown of these markets. So even go after retail. I don't know any retail silver shop that would be open in this situation. They just won't be open. They'll be, they wouldn't want to sell to you anyway. With the banking system all failed, and they're like, what, you're going to give me fiat money? You won't have fiat money to give. We need to think bigger about the implications of silver breaking free of 170 years of price suppression. Okay, TF Metals, love Turd Ferguson, says it won't be the Comex that defaults. Instead, it'll be the LBMA. Either way, if it's the LBMA goes first or the Comex goes first, they're going to literally go after the inventories of both of them, whichever one goes first. Or they'll probably go at the same time, truthfully, and then all the follow-on stuff happens. Tacoma 110 says banks can pay cash for contracts, but that will likely cause many bank failures, cascading into the entire banking system. In my opinion, yeah, I think it triggers the derivative implosion, kind of like 2008 when they said we're 2 hours away from the entire system failing. That's why they had to bail out the banks. I think we'll be there again, but this time they won't bail out the banks. That's my take. Ultimately, when all claims vaporize, the only thing that will matter is who's holding onto physical assets. That is true. And that's why I've been screaming for a very long time. It's in your own possession. Physical in your own possession. Don't screw around with anything else right now. If you have gold and you're not swapping it for 80 ounces of silver, 80 plus ounces of silver, I have no idea why not. Because, when it comes to the true 7-to-1 ratio as the mining ratio is right now, although most of that silver, more than 100% of the silver is going into industrial. So is it 1-to-1? Is it 1-to-10? I think 80-to-1, 86-to-1 right now is just the most ridiculous thing you can ever hear. If you have gold in your possession, if you have gold fillings, swap them out for silver fillings. It's just the no-brainer of a lifetime there. And I think when people understand that, because a lot of people have a lot of gold, a swap for silver, if you say you have 100 ounces of gold, and you're rich that way, right? You have 100 ounces of gold, and you want more gold. I want 8 times the amount of gold I already have. You can wait and work your job and wait for 10, 15 years to do that. Or you can just swap it for silver today, wait for the silver gold ratio to go to something rational, like 10-to-1, which would be 8. You'd make, that's 8 times, right? Wait, no, it isn't. 10-to-1. So when it goes to 10-to-1, which is, I think, still too high, you can swap it back for, it would be, 800 ounces of silver. Is that right? Anyway, you get the gist of it. You make 8 times the amount of silver you already had. So if you have 100 ounces, you'd have 800 ounces of gold. If the gold silver ratio went from 80-to-1 to 10-to-1, that's 8 times, right? Yeah, that works out. Anyway, those are the things you got to think about. And I know it's crazy, and I know it's It's never happened in the history of mankind that it's never been an unbacked fiat monetary system with the global reserve currency, the U.S. dollar, as something people believed in, and there should be no doubt in your mind that it's ending, and it's ending for good. So you need to be positioned in the right place, and this is the right time to do it. All right, that's what I got for you. This is Bix Weir. We are currently giving away one Veritasium token. We have some left, not many. Probably Tuesday we'll end that, and then we're going to go back to giving away the original Road to Roota silver coin of Roota going down the Silver Brick Road in the Grand Canyon. Love that coin. We got some more, and we'll be giving that away with the private road subscription. Go check it out, roadtoroota.com. Click on subscribe today. I'll talk to you guys later.